Hi there, and welcome back to the Marias Pass HO scale layout. In this video, I'm going to show you the process of painting my simple backdrop. Before we begin, let me know in the comments how you would make a backdrop, whether using paint, a photo, or something else. All right, let's get into it. The backdrop on my layout, or really any layout for that matter, does a lot of things. It not only provides a sense of perspective and distance, but it also establishes lighting and mood. A number of layouts do this very well, and I took a lot of inspiration from their methodology. Grant Eastman's Southern Alberta rail layout does a great job of extending scenes with a detailed hand-painted backdrop. In many scenes, his use of a dark tree line right where the scenery meets the backdrop creates the sense of a vast forest without the need for as many trees. This was an element that I wanted to include in my backdrop, although I also decided that I wanted to employ a less intricate backdrop painting method at the cost of detail and a sense of depth. My friend John, who models the Union Pacific Cascade subdivision, really effectively communicated both tree lines and mountains with a simple backdrop technique using just a few colors of latex paint. While on other sections of his backdrop he has rendered exceptionally detailed mountain scenery, I thought the time savings of the latex paint method was something I wanted to take advantage of. And so I decided that I wanted to make my backdrop with 3 or 4 shades of latex paint. Further, I decided to focus heavily on the element of mood. This was an important factor in choosing colors because I want my layout to represent an early to mid-summer version of Marias Pass, specifically on an overcast and potentially misty day. I collected numerous images and videos that captured the feel I was going for and created a mood board. From here, I distilled the images to what I believed to be a few common elements. Those were the sky color, distant mountains, an intermediate tree line, and then the foreground tree line. In Adobe Illustrator, I colored polygons that represent each of these elements by color matching to a few select images. From there, I found the closest latex paint color match. I chose juniper berry for the foreground trees, chalky blue for the second tree line, constellation for the mountains and hills, and subtle blue for the sky. These are all PPG paint colors that can be ordered at a hardware store. For the most part, the sky color was already painted from my days of modeling Crawford Hill, so we're going to skip that part. Really, the first step was painting the distant hills, which largely establishes the perspective for the remaining 2 layers. On the lower level, scenes like Columbia Falls, which we're looking at here, are still at some distance from the steep mountains that the main line will wind through further up the grade. You can see in this prototype image from Whitefish, which is just down the grade from Columbia Falls, that mountains appear far away, and so I painted them in a relatively low profile. Just around the corner from Columbia Falls, we enter the scene of Belton, and scenery starts to get a bit more vertical here. This is basically the gateway to the big mountain grade, so the backdrop elements are painted much higher. In this scene, the light blue layer we were just painting at Columbia Falls is intended to be much closer, and typically you would communicate that proximity by choosing a darker color. However, because we're attempting to model an overcast and misty day, the light color still feels appropriate to me because even scenery that is relatively near the viewer may appear light in color due to moisture hanging in the air. And most importantly, the weather and atmospheric element gives me the wiggle room to continue using the same 4 paint colors while communicating a variable sense of distance in the backdrop. Belton is also the first scene on the grade where we see treetop detail in the second layer of paint. To achieve this, I just used a rough stippling motion to get the look I was going for. One other unique consideration at Belton was creating a sense of distance with the river. Here, the mountain valley is supposed to move back and away from the tracks, where the river is implied to continue on, so all the paint layers were drawn down to suggest this perspective. On the upper level in the scene of Essex, I had completed the sky color and the first 2 landscape colors, and so it was time to add the foreground tree layer that will provide a dark backing for the trees that will eventually sit in front of them. Once done at Essex, I continued elsewhere on the layout. Unfortunately, after months of looking at the backdrop we just painted, I thought there was something off, and so I decided to go back over the original backdrop and make it even taller. I felt that once some physical scenery was in place, the backdrop as originally painted would have seemed far too low profile and understated. As mentioned in episode 4 of this construction series, the scenery along this line, and particularly on the upper level, is very vertical in nature, so pairing the physical mountain scenery with an appropriately tall backdrop is an important aspect. Just like the first time, I started with the lightest color and re-established the most distant hillside. For the 2 tree lines on the upper level, I not only extended their height, but also redefined the tree detail to appear a bit coarser. In other words, the tree lines now feature a bit more separation between the individual treetops. This is just a matter of preference, but it seems to blend in with the physical trees a bit better. Well, that's about it for painting the backdrop. As you can see, it's super simple and really fast. In fact, it's so fast that I had enough time to do it twice. So again, let me know in the comments how you would paint a backdrop, probably only one time around, and let me know if you have any thoughts or questions. As always, thanks so much for watching, stay tuned, and I'll see you next time.